So yesterday I woke up at Jeff Busby Campground, set out, and it was looking to be a pretty boring day. It all changed about mile 20 when I found Sam and Gregor, who were fellow bikepackers this time, going north. And so we decided to ride together for a little while. And these guys are super interesting, let me tell you. They are basically doing the Natchez Trace, same as I am, but their philosophy for doing it is a little bit different, or their style is a little different, which is really, honestly, a great thing. Everybody has their own way of doing it. Devin, who I met a few days back, he was really lightweight, camping out, had really nice gear, and super quick, super light. Sam and Gregor just have bikes that they had laying around. They didn't put a bunch of money into them. In fact, Gregor was borrowing one of Sam's bikes. They have just kind of the packing gear that they had laying around. They have like a frame bag and like a handlebar bag, and both of them are just carrying backpacks. And they're truly just out here doing it. Not a whole lot of prep. They said we were like hanging out the night before, and our friends were like, shouldn't you guys be like training or doing any kind of preparation or anything? And they're like, nah. And the next day they just set out and started pedaling. And so totally just a really cool attitude, super awesome guys, really funny and cool to hang out with. We rode together for a while, and they just had some interesting stories, interesting perspective. They're staying at motels along the way, kind of talked about some of the sketchy places they've stayed at, and just the struggle of having to go off. They only have like a 1 liter, 2 liter water capacity each. So every time there's like a town, they usually go off, several miles to go and get water sometimes, and food as well. They have snacks, but they mostly are depending on fast food joints, there's not really that many fast food joints. They said they've eaten a lot of southern country fried home cooking, and it's taking a toll on their bodies. But it was just really interesting being able to ride with some other people and enjoy the conversation. It made the miles pass by really quick. And not too long after I met them, they had to go off to find some water, and I just kept on going, pulled off at a little spot and met another couple. They were actually in a van, but kind of an older couple, but they were driving up to Washington to start a cross-country bike trip. And they filled up my water bottles. I felt bad because Sam and Gregor could have just kept going with me and gotten their stuff filled up. But they filled me up with icy cold water from their van that they had in a little like mini fridge, I guess, or something. And we just talked for a while. Super cool people. Not too much further, I found Sam and Gregor again. I thought I'd never seen them again, but sure enough, they're just on the side of the road. And I stayed at Davis Lake Campground. Once again, another interesting turn of events. Went and talked to the camp host. They had one site left. So I got that site. It was $20. They showed me where I was. I set up my stuff. Was there for about an hour. They had a laundry facility, so I went and did some laundry. That was so nice. Was able to jump in the lake too and kind of clean off. The showers weren't operative because of COVID. For some reason that was still an issue. And I was just kind of bumming around at my campsite when this dad comes up and he's like, hey, I talked to the camp host. There's no more spots, but me and my two boys, like I promised them that we could go camping today, and we're really hoping to stay here. And so they said, because I was barely taking up any of my campsite, it was a place mostly for RVs and trailers, so I'm just taking up a little corner of my site. And he said, hey, they also just had a tent, and they said, can we camp with you? We'll pay half. I of course told them yes, like I'm not gonna ruin, dad and kids weekend. So I was like, yeah, of course. Plus they paid half. Got a half-price campsite. That was amazing in my opinion. They started a fire. We just had a good conversation. Their tent had a bit of a malfunction, so I was able to contribute some tape to help them fix that up. And one of the boys had a boo-boo on his toe, and so I whipped out my handy med kit and patched him all up. And the kids definitely brought some energy and some life into what I thought was going to be a very monotonous day, but turned out to be honestly one of the best so far. And it was all thanks to the people I encountered along the way. So I left the Davis Lake campsite pretty early, said goodbye to my friends, the dad and his two sons, Zach and Landon and Logan, and took off towards Tupelo. I had this idea, it was Saturday, and I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, so basically means I go to church on Saturday, so I thought, I'll look up and see if there's a Seventh-day Adventist church in Tupelo that I might be able to attend the service or something like that. So looked one up, found it, got there about 9:30, and it said the service started at 11, so I was like, oh, I'll just stick my head in and see if anybody's there. There were a couple cars in the parking lot, so opened up the door, stuck my head in, and they kind of all were taken aback. They were dressed in their church clothes, and I was dressed in bike shorts and probably exactly as I look right now. And so instantly they were pretty accepting, and the pastor actually said, yeah, I used to do a lot of biking myself and the same kind of thing you're doing. And so he was like, yeah, you should join us. And they were going to be having Sabbath school, the equivalent of Sunday school, at 10. And so yeah, they asked me to join them, and I thought, yeah, sure. I'd avoid kind of some of the heat. It was also hot yesterday. And so I joined them. It was a great service. Enjoyed that, and then afterwards there was potluck, which they invited me to, so I got to feast on other people's food. I felt bad that I couldn't contribute to anything, but don't know that they would have found anything in my food bag appetizing. And then of course the pastor and his wife Eddie and Judy, they were extremely hospitable, just inviting me in, and in fact after eating potluck they asked me if I would like to stay at their house. And so I did some of the math, and they were about 18 miles up the trace in the direction I was going, so did some of the math and figured it out to how I can still kind of stick to my timeline, and I actually was able to stay with them last night, which was really awesome. They bought me a pizza, which I devoured most of, and gave me some watermelon, which was super refreshing. We kind of just hung out in the evening and watched some of The Chosen, a show that kind of follows the story of Christ and the story of the Bible. I got to sleep in a bed, take a shower, and it was just really cool. Super thankful for them and their hospitality and just the great conversations we had, and learned a lot from them. Other highlights of the day included, after church, I left some of my stuff in the church and just took my bike just by itself without all the bags, and rode to Elvis Presley's birthplace, which was kind of an interesting area. Got some fun photos. There's a statue, and I was able to fit my bike kind of with Elvis in like this pose with his legs spread, and so I just like fit my bike under there. It made it look like he was riding a bike, which turns out Elvis was actually a big bike fan, and according to the signage there, at 11 years old, he was supposed to get something for his birthday. He went down to the hardware store, and his mom was with him, and he wanted a .22 rifle, and she said, nope, too dangerous. So his next idea was a bike, and once again she decided that was too dangerous. And so the third option was a guitar, and thus the legend Elvis was born. So yesterday I left the pastor and his wife's house pretty early in the morning. Didn't have to pack anything up because I slept in a bed, which was incredible. Once again, just super thankful for their hospitality and their generosity and for the food they fed me. But left pretty early and had the idea to go all the way to Collinwood. It was going to be about 80 miles, and it was pretty hot out. So, there's like fish biting and stuff in here. It's kind of weird. So I set my sights pretty high and ultimately came up short, but that's okay. You can kind of do whatever you want when you're traveling alone. So nothing too notable yesterday other than being super hot all day. I met one guy, Tim, who had, his bike looked like it must have weighed at least 110, 120 pounds. And he just had everything strapped on there, like tied down. He didn't really have like panniers, just kind of like all like lashed onto his bike. He had originally had a cat with him, a cat carrier and cat food, and I just couldn't even picture that. I mean, his bike was already so loaded up. Powered through 70 miles today, really felt strong. So now I get to relax in a nice cold river. Another episode of how long will it be until someone pulls into this deserted picnic area and ruins my video. Just kidding. But seriously, it's happened so many more times than it should have. Considering just how barren the trace is, for the most part. So yesterday was a hot day. It was long. I rode 70 miles. Pretty much the only highlights were I stopped in Collinwood, Tennessee. It's basically the first town across the Tennessee border. It was kind of a cool little area. I stopped at the Welcome Center. It was really nice, and there was like some pretty cool quilts and like a little historical like museum area type thing. Filled up some water there. I stopped at the McGlamory stand, which wasn't anything special. Just a historical site where an inn and trading post used to be on the old Natchez Trace, and so the Natchez Trace Parkway follows that, and it was used by post riders and Native Americans as well as cane tucks. They would float down the Mississippi River on these big rafts. They would sell the lumber and whatever crops or stuff they're carrying on the raft with them, and then they would walk on the Natchez Trace the old trace back to wherever they were from. So it was kind of like a highway, and I guess there's a lot of issues with thieves and of course mosquitoes and dogs. So anyways, there was a site for the McGlamory stand. It was like an inn and kind of a waypoint, a stopover along the old Natchez Trace. And there wasn't really anything there, just kind of a sign telling you about the history. But through the forest I could see a fire tower. Yeah, whenever there's something tall that can be climbed, I have to climb to the top. And so it was really sketchy. The first flight of stairs didn't even have actual steps. There was like these two rails, and there was wooden planks that were used for the steps that were bolted onto these flanges that stuck out about 2 inches on each side. And so where those were bolted, like the first flight of stairs, there was no wooden planks whatsoever. So I was just like carefully stepping up on those like 2-inch flanges all the way to the top of the first flight. And then I don't know if that was done purposefully or if all the boards rotted out. I tend to think the former, but it didn't stop me. And so I continued up. There was a couple other boards missing and stuff. Got to the top, and I really wanted to get like inside the little building. As soon as I stuck my head up through like the floor of the little shack up there, I saw like a family of barn owls. And I wasn't trying to mess with them because, well, whatever he was doing was pretty intimidating, and I was not ready to get attacked, so I stayed just a little bit below that, and that was just really cool. I had a great campsite right next to the river. Got to take a kind of like a, not an ice bath, but the guy said there's like minerals in the water, and it was supposed to be like an Epsom salt bath for your muscles. And so I was like, okay, yeah, totally, I'm down for that kind of hippie stuff. Didn't quite beat the heat like I had hoped to, but today's the last day, so I'm just gonna put my head down, power through. I just ate like the last of my food. So there's truly not a whole lot that's happened today either, so I may not even really recap. I might just launch straight into the montage.